Just moments from now, senior Obama administration officials will hold a conference call to discuss Hamid Karzai's upcoming visit to the White House. The Afghan president arrives in the U.S. today. He is scheduled to meet with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton on Thursday before Friday's crucial meeting with the president. The two leaders will discuss future troop levels in Afghanistan, which will be drawn down significantly in the next 2 years. As mentioned, there were protesters out in front of the White House over John Brennan's nomination as CIA director. Why aren't we hearing much about the controversy surrounding Brennan? Plus, welcome back. Our First Read team notes President Obama's second-term national security team. They say it says a lot about his confidence level right now. In fact, the First Read team writes, Kerry, Hagel, Brennan, and keeping Tom Donilon as national security advisor indicates the president is not just interested in running foreign policy out of the White House, but he wants to leave an Obama imprint. But it may be more than that. Obama is displaying a confidence that he didn't necessarily show after 2008. Let me bring in CNBC Chief Washington Correspondent John Harwood. John, it's a great pleasure to have you on. So if that analysis is accurate, the First Read team saying there is a new level of confidence, where will this confidence lead us, especially with these new national security members, if they are all confirmed here?
Well, first of all, it's led us to the point of him being willing to take on these confirmation fights. He was willing to take on Susan Rice for a while. That one ended up getting too difficult, and she stepped aside. But the president's got an attitude of, I've been vindicated by the election. I've been vindicated by my record in the first term. I got Osama bin Laden. I wound down wars that were unpopular. And so he has is looking at Republicans and saying, you guys were smack-talking me for a couple of years, and you had the Tea Party in 2010, and you thought I was back on my heels, but I've just been vindicated by the voters in the election with 51%, and I'm going to try to impose my will as much as I can.
Chuck Hagel and John Kerry, the Politico today, their headline story, point to how formidable these two might be for many reasons, but again, both being Vietnam veterans, and how this could, with the president's agenda and strategy, set the stage for wars in the future or the avoidance of military footprint on the ground in the years ahead, John.
Well, I think to some degree the latter, Tamron, is the relevant point here. The term Vietnam veteran brings with it all of the turmoil and all the tumult and all the second guessing that came with that conflict. And so people like Chuck Hagel and John Brennan, who are not averse to the use of force, nevertheless are very discriminating in how they go about it and how they think about it. And I think that's going to influence President Obama's decision making. Chuck Hagel, of course, was reluctant to get behind the second war in Iraq that President George W. Bush launched, and that was the beginning of his divergence from the Republican establishment in a serious way. But that thinking is grafted in a significant way onto the entire Democratic Party.
And just quickly here, the battle ahead with Chuck Hagel. We're going to talk to Senator Cardin in a second, but meanwhile, what do you make of at least the dilemma for some Republicans like a John McCain, who've been on record praising Chuck Hagel, even saying he could be Secretary of State, to now having what are referred to as serious concerns?
Well, I think it's one thing to express concerns and to criticize him. It's going to be another thing in the end to vote to deny the president his choice. Remember, on John McCain, Chuck Hagel was one of 4 Republican senators who stepped up and endorsed John McCain when he was running against George W. Bush in the 2000 presidential primary. So there is a real history there. It was tested in the 2008 campaign and strained because of what Chuck Hagel did during that campaign. But I think the odds are that if the president sticks with this nomination, and there's every reason to think he will, that the Democratic concerns are likely to melt away substantially, and there will be a big chunk of Republicans who vote against him, but not likely enough to derail that nomination.
All right, John, thank you very much. Good seeing you. Happy New Year. And after the president's nomination of Chuck Hagel, Democratic Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland issued a statement saying, in part, quote, I have concerns based on positions he's taken and statements he's made on a variety of topics. Joining us now, Senator Cardin. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
It's nice to be with you, Tamron.
Obviously, we've heard, as I mentioned, Senator John McCain, the Republican Party having serious concerns, but here you are, a Democrat, and Tammy Baldwin, a new member of the Senate, also expressing some concerns. But in the end, do you believe that Chuck Hagel will perhaps ease your mind in a meeting? I know you've requested and that he will be confirmed here.
Well, I know Chuck Hagel very well. I served with him in the Senate. He's an honorable person. He's served our nation wearing the uniform of our nation in Vietnam. But there are concerns, and during the confirmation process, we're going to have these questions answered. There's an issue about what his position is in regards to Iran. He opposed certain sanctions against Iran. That's hard for me to understand. He's used language not just once, but at least twice that have me concerned, and I want some questions answered. Normally, we defer to the president and allow his team to come into place, but we have an independent responsibility to advise and consent, and these questions need to be answered, and I have some concerns. So
amongst your concerns, let's start with Israel here. You believe that he is anti-Israel, that he does not support Israel?
No, my concern mainly is with Iran. When he did not support stronger sanctions against Iran, I believe he said that we shouldn't do that unilaterally. Well, I believe America should be in the leadership to show the international community our resolve to make sure Iran does not become a nuclear weapon state. I want to understand Senator Hagel's thought process as to why he opposed the tougher sanctions.
Well, at least in this new interview, and some of those who've come out to defend him, they say that he's not soft on Iran, that he's not opposed to sanctions. His words were that he did not want the United States to go it alone. He points to, in this new interview about UN sanctions, that it not being an effort just with the United States, and he says that the UN sanctions now are working.
Well, if the United States would have waited for the international community, I would dare say